If God ever caught up with you, what do you think he'd say? What do you think he'd do? What would that even look like? Most of us can't even begin to picture what an encounter with God might be like. Some of us might once have felt that God was a reality in life, but now, not so much. Maybe you felt like you failed. Maybe you felt like your years of following were fruitless. Maybe you're just fed up with the whole God thing. Well, if nevertheless God caught up with you, what would it be like? If he caught you off guard in the midst of your life, busying yourself with your daily grinds, and then God, what would that be like? John's Gospel in the Bible describes exactly this situation. It starts by affirming your intuition. You know, if you scratch your head and start to wonder what God would look like, John says, yeah, no one's ever seen God, but his son, Jesus, has made him known. God has a representation on earth. There's something you can look at. There's the Son of God, a chip off the old block, just like his dad. And he showed up full of grace and truth. He was love covered over in skin. He had a magnetic personality, unflinching courage. He gave spellbinding speeches, brought blistering critique of the powerful, and heart-melting mercy to the meek. He healed the sick, he raised the dead, he banished evil, he calmed hurricanes, he walked on water. All the things you'd expect if he was the Son of God. And he recruited into his movement the most surprising people, starting with Peter. Peter was a fisherman. And one day when the fishing business wasn't going so well for Peter, Jesus caused a miraculous catch of fish, and Peter began to realize who Jesus was. And at first he told Jesus, "Get away from me, I'm a sinner." You know, in the presence of greatness, Peter felt small, unclean, unworthy. And Jesus essentially said, "You make mistakes, I don't. Come follow me. Come follow me and I'll make you a fisher of men and women." And so Peter started following Jesus. And Jesus was training Peter all the while to be the chief spokesman for the movement. And he wasn't recruited from the top universities or Bible colleges or halls of power. He was recruited from the docks. And that's what Jesus is like. He's not interested in power or status or ego. Peter was, though. And this kept on being a problem. When Jesus told everyone he was going to die on the cross to give his life for us, Peter was the one to object. "Never, Lord," he said, which is a strange combination of words. Never, Lord. Peter thought you had to build your platform, use your influence, flex your muscles. He couldn't understand the way of the cross, the way of self-giving and sacrifice. So when Jesus was arrested and put on trial, Peter is outside the courtroom warming himself by the fire. And people start to recognize him. "Hey, aren't you with Jesus? I swear you're with Jesus." And then Peter swears, "Never heard of the guy. Perish the thought." 3 times he denies knowing Jesus. And when he realizes what he's done, he weeps bitterly. He failed Jesus catastrophically, decisively in his hour of need. It was all too much. He had tried the God thing. He tried following Jesus. He wasn't up to it. It wasn't for him. And in the last chapter of John's Gospel, Peter is with 6 other disciples, feeling sorry for themselves. He's by the Sea of Tiberias, and he says, "I'm going out to fish." And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. You know, Peter never catches anything unless Jesus is around. But he's such a relatable character. I mean, here he is, failed, fruitless, and fed up. He's tried the Jesus thing, fail. Now he's gone back to the day job, fail. What's left for him? Well, this is where Jesus shows up, right in the midst of our failures, right in the midst of our fruitlessness and fed-upness. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" Now, you love that. They might be failed, fruitless, and fed up, but here is the most important thing. They have a friend. And as a friend, what does Jesus do? Well, he does what the best friends do. He makes fun of them. He's like, "Have you got any fish? You got any fish?" "Friends, how's it going?" he says. "How's the old life going? How's it working out for you, hey?" And the disciples, like all fishermen, when they have no fish, they just give a one-word answer: no. Later, when they have fish, they count them all up, so they'll be able to tell you that they had 153 fish, and not just any fish, 153 large fish. They will tell you. When they have fish, they will not be lost for words. They'll be very talkative indeed, but they have no fish here. And so it's just monosyllabic: no fish. So Jesus does what he did back in Luke 5. He gives them a command, which shouldn't really make any difference, except that it's Jesus who makes the command. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." Jesus says, essentially, will you trust me or will you trust your old strategies that keep on failing? Which is it? Trust my word or trust what you've always done? Well, the disciples find themselves trusting the authoritative word of this friend on the beach. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. And suddenly, with this net writhing and bursting with fish, bells start to ring for the disciples. John, one of the other disciples, essentially says, "Wait a minute. Weird commands from a stranger on a beach? A miraculous catch of fish? This is classic Jesus," thinks John. "It's the Lord," says John. And what's Peter's reaction? Peter's reaction is the exact opposite of his experience at the beginning of his life with Jesus. Back in Luke chapter 5, there was a miraculous catch, and Peter had said, "Lord, depart from me. I'm a sinner." Now, at the end of his experience with Jesus, in John 21, Peter does the very opposite. He flees to Jesus. What's changed in Peter? Has he become less sinful in the years since that first catch? No, it's just he knows more of Jesus. Now he knows that Jesus is the one to run to in your failure and in your fruitlessness. So then we read about Peter's hilarious reaction. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he'd taken it off, and he jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you've just caught." Simon Peter climbed aboard and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153, but even with so many, the net was not torn. Do you see how excited Peter is? He's like a Labrador puppy. When he realizes it's Jesus, it prompts him to have two thoughts simultaneously. Thought number one, I'd better get dressed. Thought number two, I better swim to Jesus right now. Both those thoughts are excellent thoughts, but acting on both of them together has really comedic consequences. It's a little bit nuts, don't you think? Peter though, he doesn't care. He's too excited. He swims to shore, and when he gets there, he doesn't seem to know what to do. So Jesus speaks up to help things along. He says, "Come on then, let's have some of your fish." And essentially, Peter says, "Right, of course, yeah, the fish. Yeah. Where are my manners?" And he jumps back into the water, and he takes this big heaving mass of fish in the net, grabs it all by himself. None of the other disciples seem game to interfere with Peter here. They're like, "All right, we'll leave you to deal with this, Peter." And Peter drags it all by himself into Jesus' presence. He's like an overexcited Labrador puppy, and now he's soaking wet. And all the while, what is Jesus doing? He's firing up the barbecue. He's laying out the bread rolls. He's just quietly getting on with grilling the fish. And when everyone's there, he says, come on then, let's have breakfast. It's wonderful, don't you think? There they are, failed, fruitless, fed up. There is Jesus. Come and have breakfast. At this meal, Jesus takes the opportunity to sort things out with Peter. Around this fire, Peter is given the opportunity to replay his earlier fireside denials. Wouldn't you love a chance to replay the things you've gotten wrong in life? A chance to replay your mistakes and get them right this time. At this feast, Jesus gives Peter that chance. Peter had denied Jesus 3 times, and now he has the opportunity to confess his love for Jesus 3 times. The question was never whether Jesus loved Peter. Jesus loved Peter to hell and back. Jesus loved Peter all the way to the cross. Jesus' love for Peter had never changed. The trouble with sin is not that it stops Jesus loving us. The problem is that it stops us loving Jesus. But here, around this meal, around this fire, Peter has the chance to say publicly, Jesus, I love you. I love you. I love you. And Jesus in return says, feed my lambs, take care of my sheep, feed my sheep. Peter is recommissioned by Jesus to a role of great responsibility and trust. This is what Jesus brings to those who are failed, fruitless, and fed up. In the midst of your failures, you can look at Jesus, your friend, and say, what a Lord, what a servant. Here is the one who serves you all the way to the cross, dying for all your failures and rising to bring you the feast. You know, this isn't just a lovely old story, this is a future reality. This is life after death, Jesus style. This is what life after death looks like with Jesus. It's wonderful. It's long country walks with your friends. It's long conversations into the night about the stuff that really matters. It's fishing with your mates, barbecues on the beach. It's feasting and family and peace and grace and Jesus, our battle-scarred brother, face to face. This is the future. This is Jesus' future. And if you're connected to him by faith, this is your future. You have a friend in the Lord Jesus. And if he's your Lord, then one day on the far side of all your failures, on the far side of your fruitlessness and your frustration, on the far side of death, he'll come to you and he'll say, friend, come and have breakfast.